17th May. Every year we celebrate, and from last year we started doing it together between IEEE and IAs, and then we are going to be having a physical event. So again, I formally welcome all of you to this event, World Telecom and Info Society Day on 17th May, between IEEE ComSoc Bangalore chapter and Institution of Engineers. Today's theme is this year's Empowering the Least Developed Countries Through Information and Communication Technology. And there is this definition of least developed countries. And I must say that, there are currently in the UN list, there are 46 countries. And this covers 880 million of people. This is all about connecting the unconnected. On one hand, we are talking about, from 3G to 4G to 5G, and a lot of us have been researching and writing books on 6G and thinking about standards. But on the other hand, many least developed countries do not even have the connections. Now, I'm not going to go through the list of those countries. Many of them are African region, as you might expect. But at the same time, many of them are in our neighboring regions. For example, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Cambodia. These are in these areas, and they are also in that list. So I think India being a large country, and as we celebrate, it is kind of our responsibility and added responsibility, if you want to consider that way, to play a good role, not just for our country, but also around it. This idea was launched even in 1960s or so, but the first UN meeting on LDC happened in 1981 in Paris. The second meeting in 1990, also in Paris. After that in Brussels, Turkey, and Doha. The 5 conventions have happened on these least developed countries and how telecom infrastructure can play a big role in this. I also should say that, it is an ongoing exercise, and there are some countries that were falling in this, but they have come out of it, which means if we can take a right programs like Botswana, the LDC status, but they have upgraded into this. I would also like to say that there is this subtle difference between LDC and LIC, least developed countries and low-income countries. For example, India is still in low-income countries. Our per capita GDP is in a different league, and we are trying to grow through that. That is different, but at least we are connected. So we are not into that LDC kind of definitions for sure. And India is playing a big role in the telecom and infrastructure in the recent time. We have seen in this COVID time, as well as in other times, the digital revolutions that have happened, and other UPI, currently ONDC. These are public goods infrastructure that country is bringing, and it is helping in a big way. Just imagine, COVID coming in a couple of years before and not having the digital pay in place, we would have been in big difficulty. The whole work from home could have been jeopardized. Therefore, I think the role of information and communication technology is significant. It is not just on connections, but it is empowerment. It is livelihood for many people. And UN has defined many SDG goals, 17 goals. And if you look into that, some of them like income growth, the employment opportunity, the industrializations, these can be connected to what we are building as communications. I just wanted to conclude by saying, the equipment manufacturing in the United Nations, we have 3 bodies: ITU-T that looks into telecom, ITU-R that is looking into radio spectrum, ITU-D in the development and impact from there. When you look into these LDC countries, we see there are structural impediments for their sustainability. There is cost structure. There are only a few big companies that make all the telecom equipments globally. Even for bigger countries, there are no vendors that are building fully. And imagine countries in Africa and other places, the cost structure is an issue. So for private players, the ROI doesn't come often. And therefore, you have to have somebody from government, from NGOs to be able to sustain and understand their needs. I think understanding needs of these countries is also very, very vital. And this is where standards play a big role. We have in ITU, we have in IEEE, we are talking even in G20. Currently, India is presiding, and I'm also involved in connecting the unconnected paradigm. So we all are working, but I believe the standards itself, while getting defined, some of these countries' needs, if it can be captured well, then possibly it will be easier to reach them. That's one dimension, obviously not all the dimensions. So I just, when I was working in Canada, in Nortel, we had one place where a lot of mobile terminals were sold. And from Nortel, we are building this infrastructure, the telecom network. But what happened is these phones that were sold there was inferior quality. Generally, between speaker and your earphone, there has to be 40 dB isolations. And this was much inferior to that. And therefore, any calls that were starting from landline, it was going through the mobile and having an echo. Now, there was no way for these countries as such, it was difficult to get those phones in place. And now you cannot replace them. So they kind of thought about, can we do something, and can you as Nortel do something in the equipments? And this is where we brought in innovations and solved some problems that were in the mobiles into the infrastructure. So it's not standards, but around standards, if we understand well, we can build solutions through the whole pipelines, make it more open structures, and great solutions that can emerge. So with this note, I really think today's topic is also apt in this role of standards in this less developed countries for socio-economic development. And we have a very established and recognized speaker with us, whom I know from since 2000 onwards. Ms. Pamela Kumar has been Director General, TSDSI since 2017 and is currently advisor there. This TSDSI is India's Telecom Standards Development Society of India. So that's the full form, and that's the official standard body from India to represent in different countries. She's an alumnus of PEC Chandigarh, Rutgers University, and IIMB, 35 plus years in communication, computing, semiconductor industry. She's been member of technical staff in AT&T in US, and then CDOT, Alliance Semiconductor, and thereafter director in Texas Instruments, director in IBM, senior director HP, before taking this standards role in TSDSI, and have been in many standard bodies, governing bodies, council members. She's been founder chair for Cloud Computing Innovation Council. So as you can see, a lot of achievements. Definitively, she has been helping India's presence in 5G, 5GI standard that came to popularize, to take it into the 3GPP standard. And we are looking forward to future development. So with that note, I would love to invite Ms. Pamela Kumar to speak. And as she prepares to take the center stage, I just wanted to also play a short video of 1.5 minutes. This is a message from ITU Telecom, the UN Director General, and just have your ear for 1.5 minutes. And then Ms. Pamela Kumar will take the stage to talk about role of standards for socio-economic development. With that, I request the secretary to play the video. Ajaz, can you play the video?
Yes, sir.
Audio is not coming.
Audio is not there.
Sir.
Audio is not coming.
Okay, we can then maybe try once more.
Yeah,
You have
sir.
to enable the audio.
Yeah. Can you see, sir?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we are
you
able
cannot-
to see, but audio is not there. Video is okay.
Yeah, maybe you need to try this offline. We can start
Yes.
the talk. And you can, yeah, we can do
Yes,
it in the
I
end.
think-
We can maybe
Yes.
play it in the end.
Yes, I think this is the right time. So Pamela, stage is yours. Thank you.
Okay.
And we have time till 3, so you can, as much as you need, please.
Sure. Okay, I need.
Mahesh, give the sharing powers to speaker. Yeah.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. We can make it maybe full screen.
Yeah, I want to go to full screen. That's what I'm seeing. Full screen thing is getting. Okay.
This program is screened in YouTube also. So a lot of YouTube.
Okay. Can you see my slides now?
Yes, perfect. Can proceed, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to. This bar I can't hide, huh? This bar that is coming in the way. Let's see what to do with this bar. Okay. Okay, thank you very much for that introduction and setting the context, Aloknath, and thanks a lot for inviting me to give this talk. Actually, I've been giving talks on World Telecom Day in different forums every year, and I was wondering about this year, and then I got this invitation, so I'm really happy to be part of this discussion. As you mentioned, the theme is on least developed countries. And what I'm trying to do here is, kind of use India as the case study on how we have used technology and standards towards socioeconomic development. And through case studies from India, I want to emphasize how important it is to get involved in standards development if you want to, because we all know technology helps in economic development, but to accelerate your development and embrace new technology at an accelerated pace, you need to be focused on standards. And of course, I want to highlight how all of you here in the audience can get involved to make a difference. So in the first section, I will focus on role of standards. Okay, so role of technology in socioeconomic development in India. So my talk is in these 4 parts. Then the role of standards, and then the promise of the next era of technology, and finally the framework for participation in the standards development cycle. So under this section, I would talk about Digital India vision, the technology adoption and its impact on economy, and finally the usage of technology and the social development that happens as we use technology for promoting social development. So we've all been, hearing about this Digital India vision, a program to transform India into an empowered society and knowledge economy, right? And at the center of it was, all these cloud computing, Internet of Things, architecture, IoT, and other digital infrastructure as utility, governance services on demand and digital empowerment of citizens. And then there were the 9 pillars around which different innovations have been driven. I think since 2015 or so, this program has been launched and we are all familiar with it. The Smart City Mission was also launched and looking at these different use cases, right? Smart energy, smart citizen, smart governance, smart healthcare, smart building, and smart infrastructure. The Smart Grid Mission has also been ongoing, looking at different aspects shown here. So all of these are emphasizing the need to leapfrog and embrace new and emerging technologies to enable these initiatives, which are geared towards the development of the country. Now, focusing on what we are most familiar with, the data, the broadband and the telecom sector. So if you see on the left-hand side, we're talking about the data usage, how it has exponentially grown since 2013, right? To become 9.7, and to a large extent, this was driven by 4G deployment. And today it is 19.5 GB per user per month. And the projection is that this will go to 50 gigabytes in 2027. And there are other countries, I was in Bahrain, they do single-digit gigabytes per person per month. Because the way they have deployed their technology, it's prohibitive for people to use more data. So the other characteristic is that largely this is video, and largely it's in regional languages. And the rapid pace at which we consume new technology. In 2016, when 4G was launched, in the first year after launch, more than 90% of the devices sold were 4G, right? And today we have more than 750 million internet users in the country. Similarly, we look at the trajectory for 2G, 3G, and 4G. So it seems like a lying down hockey stick, right? Initially, it takes time for us to embrace these technologies, and then suddenly there's an upsurge. And what is the reason for that? The reason for that is that it takes us wide. So technology has been developed with somebody else's needs in mind. Now we are trying to bring in this technology. We are late adopters and trying to fit it into India. And it takes us a while to do it in a manner that makes sense for India. And then it picks up because there is a hunger, and the need is huge. Okay. So I've even been told that whereas in other countries, they start with 30% utilization of base stations, in India from day one, our base stations get deployed at 80% utilization. So today we stand at 1.45 million mobile subscribers. And look at the share of the different service providers, from 100 million with BSNL to 400 million in Reliance Jio. It's pretty good business for all of them. Then here, what I've tried to do is I have tried to, do a comparison, a correlation between the GDP. So the GDP growth since 1992 is that blue line with the dots on it. Okay, going from $4.5 per capita to about whatever, almost $2,000. No, this is, I think this 4.5 is the, so growing to, about 2,000 plus dollars per capita from maybe some tens of dollars per capita. And the telecom subscribers growing from 4.5 million to 1.4 billion. And look at the trajectory. There has been at the inflection point, you also see a kind of an inflection in the GDP growth. So there is a direct correlation. And this is very important to understand and realize that when people get connected, they become innovative, they find all kinds of ways to solve their problems. So now when we deploy this connectivity, how do we use it? We have introduced Aadhaar, we have used Jandhan, Aadhaar and mobile, the JAM Trinity, the India Stack, And then we are deploying all kinds of applications like UPI Beam, skilling and education, digital lending, tax reform, direct benefit. So some of the examples here are that on UPI, 83 billion transactions were conducted in 2022-23, and 2 trillion dollars worth of transactions were done, and 2.2 billion COVID vaccines were given, which was a record and a role model for the rest of the world, which we can experience today. We are pretty much COVID free now and being able to deal with it without a crisis anymore. The other thing that secret in India is this growing developer community through the R&D centers in our MNCs, which are growing, and this is pre-COVID data, and post-COVID, this has probably grown a lot more. And the growth in startups, where we have become the number 2 or the number 3 in terms of number of startups in the world. Okay, so this ecosystem is also a key enabler, along with the easy acceleration and adoption of technology. So why do we need standards? Okay, so we will talk about why we need standards. We'll look at some examples from the IT industry. We'll look at India's unique challenges and opportunities, and a few case studies. This will be the bulk of my section, of my talk here. So standards should facilitate interoperability, support fair trade and fair competition, increase user, consumer, and government confidence, and stimulate innovation. That's the statement from Karen Bartelson, the IEEE president, and also the former president of IEEE SA. She has published a book, 10 Commandments for Effective Standards. And she highlights that effective standards will bring interoperability, integration of services, market growth, accelerated deployment, innovation, that, innovation for not for the sake of innovation, but innovation for impact, and in this case, socioeconomic development and inclusion, right? And what is happening with standards today, especially in the ICT telecom spaces, they are really driving the direction of technology. Standards are defining the vision for the next decade of technology, and then taking it, and then technology is being developed around that vision. So that's very unique. Now let's step back, and as I said, some examples here. Let's look at the power industry. So it all started with the development of the bulb, and which was like a proprietary solution to the lamp, right? Then when you wanted bulbs all over your house, you developed a generator. You defined standards for wiring and the sockets in which you could spread bulbs by having a generator maybe in the garage and doing lighting of the whole house. And then you started developing all kinds of applications, all kinds of devices which started going all over your house. And now you're talking about smart grid, where there are different ways in which you generate electricity, not only from one point, but you are, it's become bidirectional. Generation and production and consumption is happening in a bidirectional manner with photovoltaic cells in people's houses and buildings, and storage, with battery power is a different way of doing storage. So this is, and the plethora standards that are needed to enable something like this, we are very familiar with. Similarly, look at the IT world, right? And the computer, which was developed as a a new toy or a new gizmo, and started using for different data and computing applications. Then everybody wanted to do this, so they were data centers, right, in offices and in businesses, where you had all the compute power in a data center with terminals spread out. So there was a series of standards, but still the basic servers were proprietary. And now we're talking about cloud computing with the whole bunch of other standards, like the OCP, the Open Compute Platform, which even made the hardware, an open standard, and OpenStack, which made the software an open source, and hence the plethora of cloud computing and the number of applications that are developing around it. So that's what happens, and we are all, we all know what it has done to our economy. Now let's look at some other examples of the internet, right? The killer application was what? Email. So in the early days, there were proprietary email services being offered by America Online and WorkNet from AT&T and Prodigy and CompuServe. These were, everybody had their own solution. There was everybody was in an island, and if you signed up to one America Online, you could not send mails to people who were on AT&T WorkNet, right? Only people who were on a particular place, and based on the service you took, you could. Then there was a common protocol. Some protocols were defined which allowed some interoperability between these islands. And finally, with the creation of IETF and an open standard platform, there were a plethora of low-cost ISPs came. Now we don't even know who the internet service providers, what their names are, and they're all over the place providing all kinds of services. Similarly is the issue with cloud, right? Cloud is an island today with some of the big guys coming in. There is a vision, and this is an IEEE vision, that there should be an intercloud similar to internet with common standards being defined. And then in that vision, they have further got certain use cases, right? So this is how standards development works, right? So they created a vision that similar to internet, we should have an intercloud. Then for intercloud, they have created 6 use cases. The first one being guaranteed performance when there is an abrupt load increase. So the number of users suddenly increases to take a service. And so there is a service 1 being provided by one service provider, service 2 being provided by another service provider, number of users on one increases. So some of the other dormant services get deployed on the other, temporarily on the other service provider, so that it can increase the space to service, right? So that's the basic concept. Then I talked about OpenStack, which has thousands, tens of thousands of developers now supporting several hundreds of companies across several 100+ countries, developing codes and doing releases every 6 months or so. Now, what we did, we studied this from an India perspective, and we translated the use cases to an India case, right? Where our state data center has income tax and birth and death, and the NIC data center also has birth and death records. During the income tax filing time, there is too much load on the state data center. We transfer the birth and death, which is a steady state, into the NIC, and so this is the kind of, so we did we studied all the use cases. We looked through that. We studied all the development of cloud computing standards across the globe under various bodies, and we tried to map them to the Indian use cases. And we published a report. We found that there were gaps, so we published a report called Cloud Interoperability Portal Standard Reference Report. And then based on that, we have developed a standard, the first version that came out in 2023, right? And all of this was driven by a demand that came from, there was a cloud interoperability and portability report that was published by TRAI, and then DOT asked TSDSI to develop a spec for a standard for this interoperability. So this work has been going on for over 5-6 years now, and now we are on the verge of creating a normative standard. So now, why is it important that we get involved in standards development? The need really comes from 2 places, right? It comes from the fact that when we are going to take new technology and deploy it in India, India's specific needs are going to be different from other parts of the world. So people are developing technology in their area, in their community, based on what they see as the need. But when you bring it and you start deploying it in India, it is different. By understanding our use cases and making them part of the standards development cycle in the very beginning, technology will be easily deployed in our geography, right? And similarly, it's about building global competitiveness. So some examples here. If you look at the area of North America plus Europe, it is 34.89 million square kilometers. India is 3.2 million square kilometers, 10 times, right? Or 1/10 in terms of the area. Population is almost the same, 1.3 billion and 1.3 billion. So 10 times the density. has to be serviced. Obviously, any technology trying to service 10 times the population density will have to be thought through differently here. Similarly, the GDP, GDP 1/20th is the difference from 57 billion to 2.6 billion, right? So you need to make it affordable. And power consumption, our average power consumption is 87 watts per person, whereas it's 1,300 or 400 watts in the US and 650 in EU. If we start consuming the same power that they are consuming in US and EU, as we are aspiring for the same quality of life, using technology, then the whole world will fry. So we have to think about power consumption differently, right? We have to develop low power technologies. We have to focus on those. So essentially, if you look at this circle here, research capability, global standards, and global competitiveness. If you are making impact in standards, if you are able to contribute to standards and get your contributions accepted in standards, if you are present in standards, what does it mean? It means you have a globally competitive research capability. It means that you are globally competitive in terms of your ability to deploy new technology, to embrace new technology, your readiness to take new technology, and in terms of your ability to develop new technology and become part of the global market. There are other special requirements for us, right? With fiber to the rural is first. All technology has to be, given the demography, 70% of our population is in villages. Every new technology has to address rural requirements. The rampant diversity in language, culture, last mile, and geographical diversity. And plus the added advantage of enabling greenfield deployment of new technologies, which enable us to leapfrog in technology and leapfrog in adoption of technology, hence enabling a leapfrog in socio-economic development. So let's look at the example of what we call the 5GI. When the US, when ITU was defining the IMT 2020 usage scenarios, they were talking about indoor hotspot, they were talking about dense urban, they were talking about rural enhanced mobile broadband. And what were the configurations in rural? They were talking about 120 to 500 kilometer per hour mobility and 1.7 kilometer distance between the base stations, which is the last mile. Similarly, they had another configuration for 4 giga for different parts of the spectrum. What we introduced there was that we need not have 500 kilometers per hour or 120. We want 30 or even less kilometers per hour, but the intersite distance needs to be between for us, it was actually 10 plus kilometers, 20 kilometers between the base stations is what we want in our villages. Okay. And that was the requirement that we had to introduce for technology to be developed. But obviously, we had to negotiate it down so that other people will support our proposal because there was initial opposition on that. So this shows the journey, right? So initially, we introduced based on our requirement that base stations are based on the fiber that's going to the villages, the distance between base stations can be between 10 to 20 kilometers. We need to, support that by putting base stations at this distance wirelessly, right? Because that's what we can deploy in terms of fiber. And we introduced this new requirement. This requirement, alongside this requirement, we introduced the 5GI. We took the 3GPP 5G standard. We introduced on top of it the India enhancements and Indian innovations to achieve this specification. It got adopted by ITU. And then we were also able to finally go back to 3GPP and get it merged into their release 70. Right? Release 15, 16 were the initial 5G, and now release 17 is also 5G. So we were able to finally get it merged into release 17. So that's what it has taken to get our requirement. And the journey started in 2016, and in 2022 is when we merged into. So almost 6 years journey. Now let's look at broadcast broadband convergence, right? So there is this whole, the TV stations. The TV stations are servicing 210 million households which have TVs in there, 210 million households, 100 million plus have TVs in them. And there are TV stations which also have a lot of spectrum with them. But we find that more and more consumption is now on the mobile. So why can't what is being broadcast by the TV stations be directly consumed by the mobile? Because more and more data that is being consumed on our mobile is actually the OTT or the broadcast video that is being consumed, right? This 20 GB is mainly broadcast video. Why can't we use the broadcast spectrum and directly take it to mobile? That's the concept of D2M, direct to mobile, is a digital public good service which can enable direct broadcasting of video data to mobile devices and other smart devices at a low cost, thus widening accessibility. Right? So there are 1,150 million subscribers. They can all access this data. So the video traffic today is growing at 69% CAGR in the cellular network, and it is clogging the cellular network. Is there a smarter way of doing this? Yeah, maybe we introduce broadcast as a slice in 5G for all the broadcast data, okay, and enable prevent the other services from getting clogged. That's one approach. Then there are all other innovations that are being thought about for this, in order to enable this, and all of this. How to enable spectrum sharing, the low power, which are the cellular towers, and the high power, which are the broadcast towers. How do they work together and share spectrum, share infrastructure, and share the architecture, right? So this was a discussion that has been happening. There is a body called ATSC, which has been trying to adopt standards for this in the US. And they approached us along with some of our members, including Prasar Bharati and some startups in India and IIT Kanpur, IIT Bombay. So they have all come together and to TSDSI. An MOU has been signed in August of 2018. We've had various workshops, different interactions. We have also entered into an adoption agreement. There have been joint proposals at ITU and 3GPP. And finally, ATSC 3.0, which addresses this need, has been adopted by TSDSI as of May 2023. And there are field trials along with these Indian partners. There are field trials of this standard which have happened in Delhi. They have put their BRH in different sites in Bangalore and in Delhi, and done field trials. So this is the journey, right, of collaborating with a global standards body and trying to do something for India, which addresses India's needs. Then we have the Smart City Mission. How are we placed in time? Alok? Okay. So
we have about 10 minutes. You can speak still.
10 more minutes. So I'll not dwell too much on the Smart City Mission. I think people know a lot about it. 100 smart cities, the top 20 were identified. Analysis of what was done, showed that about 5 or 6 use cases: waste management, transport, water management, energy. These were the top use cases across all the 100 proposals of the smart cities that came when the analysis was done. So there is a need for, in order to do this effectively, a standard is needed, and we propose that maybe 1M, 2M is an answer for some aspects of it. This is another analysis of, so the first 20 proposals, when we looked at the number of use cases and the frequency with which these use cases were coming up, again towards 3 or 4 ones which were important, indicating that we need, there is some common part and there's standards. Then as we look at it, you need a common dashboard, you need interoperability between different verticals like smart governance, smart utilities. These cannot operate in silos. So again, there is need for standards for integration of these services. There is the famous Bangalore use case where, unseasonal rain caused massive traffic jams in Bangalore, and we are all familiar with these traffic jams. So one of the ministers said that I invested so much money in a flood monitoring system. I invested so much money in a traffic management system. Can these two applications talk to each other and solve this problem? The technical people went back, looked at this problem, and came back with a bill which was almost equal to what he had invested in these two. So two siloed solutions could not work, right? So you need a standard to ensure this, and you need a reference architecture. And that's the common problem for smart city all over. Another is some interesting data points here, which you can look at between Bangalore and Switzerland. The population is the same, but the population density is 20 times, right? The budget is 500 crore and 5,000 crore in 10 times here, but per person it is, I think 1/10, 1/20th, something like that. So again, the diversity, we have these 5-star STP, software technology parks, and slums next to them, and the same service provider servicing both of them, having different needs, right? And the population density, if you look at Mumbai and Delhi, it is 10 times more to what it is in Bangalore, right? Or not 10 times, maybe several 5x, 6x more, right? So these are India specific, challenges, and they need standards across. So if you're looking at your communication, LP-WAN, and other technologies, the last mile WAN technologies, if you're looking at the street furniture and the gateway technologies, if you're looking at sensor technologies and how they need to be deployed, okay, and then the application platforms that are being, several examples are there of, Citizens for All, School Portal, Bangalore One, different examples here. So all of these, without standardization, will not get deployed in volumes. So what is the challenges that come when we try to adopt new technology? If you have not been involved in the standardization and specification of that technology, you will have to force fit solutions which have been developed for somebody else. Technology is advancing at a very rapid and disruptive pace. We need to understand it. We need to moderate the use cases according to that. We need to, the last mile solutions, depending on where you are, can be very, very different. And especially in India, we have huge diversity in the last mile. The know-how of the government administrators and decision makers have very limited know-how of the technology, and hence you need to be guided, and standards is a way of influencing them in an unbiased manner. If there are no standards, there is disharmony, no common framework, and a lot of money gets thrown away when we take restricted and closed solutions, which are vendor lock-in. So you get into a rip and replace model rather than an evolutionary model of deployment of technology. And there are many, many examples where RFPs have been floated and have been pulled away because there was misalignment between technology, different parts of the technology, and at a functional level and at a business level. So this is a recipe for sure-shot disaster. If you do not use standards, develop standards, participate in standards, when you want to adopt new technology, early emerging technology, okay, either you will delay it and lose a lot of time and money, or you will just be unable to deploy it, right? To get into a rip and replace mode. So that's that's what's so important. Okay, so now what are the new technologies that are developing? So let's look at the stack. So we want to dwell on the promise of new technology, the convergence of technologies, the shift to verticals and use cases, the progress of 5G, and the launch of 6G vision. So 5G, this is the new stack, right? The new stack of technology, starting with the new nano green technologies, the various web technologies, data sciences. The most recent addition is AI, ML, metaverse, sensing, and haptics. So there is this new stack of technology developing. There is then the new way of developing technology and deploying technology. So open standards, open innovation, open source, and open data. And this is a whole new paradigm of how you work with new technology. And then there are these international bodies, especially with respect to standards, ITU, 3GPP. So all the standards that get finally come to either of these, IETF, ISO, IC, in the ICT world, right? In the communications, information systems, and telecommunication, these are the bodies we need to participate in. what has India been doing in this? So India launched 5G in the 2nd October of 2022. On 2nd April of 2023, 140,000 base 5G base stations have already been installed. Then again in April, 24th April 2023, the government declared 100 5G labs. And from what I know, more than 90 applications of 5G use case labs have been received. Okay. Then I think we are all familiar with from 5G going to 6G, what is happening. So I will not dwell. This is information that has come out of our reports and is there in the ITU report. I'll skip this slide. There are global initiatives to develop the vision of 6G happening in Europe, happening in China, and happening in the US. And there are hyperlinks here to tell you more. But what has India done? In March of 20, we are not so far behind. Okay. India launched the Bharat 6G vision. This is for the design, develop, and deploy 6G network technologies and provide ubiquitous intelligence and secure connectivity for high quality living experience for the world, right? And enable inclusive and significant enhancement in the quality of life of people across the world. Deploy 6G technologies to act as a powerful force multiplier for India at 2030. And what are the key tenets here? Affordable, sustainable, and ubiquitous. That is important as we deploy technology in India. And here are some of the key intelligent reflective services, AI/ML, extreme massive MIMO, user-defined virtualized air interfaces, distributed technologies, so all of these, right, are the technology areas. So this has been launched. There is a report in TSDSI on the 6G use cases, which was, and a white paper based on that is also available on our website. And all of this work is now being contributed at ITU in the ITU vision 6G vision document. And there's extensive discussions happening there. So now how do you become part of this, participate in standards? What is the standards development cycle and what are the different aspects of it which may enthuse you? What is the global landscape? And finally, the Indian landscape and the role of TSDSI. So we have defined that, the standardization does not exist in isolation. There is a lot of pre-standardization work that needs to happen in terms of standards-driven research projects, use case labs, patents, proof of concepts and pilots, roadmaps and market surveys, 6G alliances and workshops. So you need to get involved and participate in these, or you need to enable these, right? Then in standardization is all about contributions in our local study groups at TSDSI or BIS or any other place, or in IEEE, or and in other global SDOs like IEEE and ITU and 3GPP 1M2M. Then participation in test beds, developing test beds, participating in interops and plug fests, okay? And finally, evangelization in the post-standardization phase, trials and compliance, and having an infrastructure for compliance and certification. So that's the standards development cycle. This is the global landscape for standards development. I've already talked about it. IETF, ISO, IEC, and there's a lot of convergence happening. These 7 partners of 3GPP 1M, 2M represent different geographies. ETSI for Europe, CCSA for China, ATIS for America, Arab for Japan, Arab and TTC for Japan, TTA for Korea, and TSDSI for India. So ITUR, I think Aloknath also mentioned this. In ITUR, these are the various study groups. This is, the kind of work within each study group. There are working parties, and these are the kind of work happening in each of these working parties. What's happening here is we have leaders in various, from India in various study groups. Then we have national study groups, which are kind of reflectors of these study groups where work is happening in India. And then we are taking contributions to ITUR. Similarly, ITUT, these are the study groups mentioned here, SG2 to SG20. There are a lot of focus groups as well. And these are the key areas and the kind of questions. There are questions in each of these areas which are being addressed across these study groups in these technology areas. And then there is a list here of where, what are the kind of contributions being proposed from India, TEC, and TSDSI, and where work is happening, and where we are identifying potential areas where we think work should happen in India to meet our national priorities. Then there is 3GPP. 3GPP in the 5G era is talking about verticals, right? This is release 18 and 19 is 5G. So self-driving cars, smart cities, work and play in the cloud, augmented reality, smart homes, industry automation, right? And in that period, the mobile subscribers are growing, IoT connections are growing from 10 billion to 25 billion. So this is the detail on what is being addressed in release 18, what is release 19. There's a big workshop in June in which this will get frozen. And sorry, this is 5G plus. Yeah, this is beyond 5G advanced. It's called 5G advanced. So up to release 17 was 5G, release 18 and 19 is, and these are there are 6 working groups in RAN and SA. In 3GPP, RAN is radio access network, SA is system architecture, and CT is the core technologies. There are 4 study groups there. They meet almost monthly, and 4 times in a year there are plenaries in which this is developed. So there are hundreds of thousands of contributions that get made per year in 3GPP. Then in 3GPP, release 8 was the first release that actually got deployed. So release 1 to 8 was still figuring it out. That's how long it took. 1M2M, which is addressing the IoT space, and we discussed earlier how complex that is. You got a flavor. So they started with release 1, release. Currently, they are planning release 5. Release 4 is almost ready. Okay. And it's important that we get more and more involved and engaged in this to address our requirements. CDOT has been a front runner and is pretty prominent in this space. So given all of this, we did an analysis on where do we stand as India, right? In terms of number of contributions being made at 3GPP, at 1M2M, right? And we realized that total number of contributions are 0.44%. So 90,000 contributions were made in 2022, and we were at 0.4. We were at 0.17 earlier. We grew to point. And out of these, more than 80% are being made by the multinationals. The Indian-based industry and academia are making only about 20%. So we are really at only 0.1%, right? In terms of our capability to make contributions to standards. So what's been the journey of our neighbor here, right? So you can see that today, China stands at number 1 in terms of the total number of contributions at 3GPP for the period 2000 to 2019. But on the right-hand side, the graph, which you can't see that well, it shows that they were nowhere earlier, right? I just have 3 more slides to go. I'm just concluding. Okay, and so they have grown. For 2000 to 2006, they were nowhere. Then they made a little leap in 4G, and then in 5G they had this exponential growth. So it took them 3 cycles to come there, 3 decades. Okay, and look at the number of patents that they have now, right? And it all because they have also done a lot of innovation. So based on these studies, we have done some modeling, and we are trying to say that from this 0.1%, can we grow to about 4% in 2030 and 20% in 2035? What will it take us to get there? Although our ministers want us to be at 20% in 2030 itself. And that analysis, based on that, we have studied various things, defined what is happening in 3GPP ITU. We've looked at our national priorities, and based on that, we have defined a roadmap which we should work on, which means these are all the areas in which we should be working. We should be doing research. We should be making contributions, which are important to India from the point of view of its national standards. And we have tried to publish a roadmap, a timeline based on what is happening at 3GPP and ITU. Using their timeline, we have tried to publish a timeline for India. And finally, what I wanted to do was, bring you back to a contribution I made at WPTISD in 2020 to say a call to lead the change. Maybe I will skip this section. Basically, Today's life is changing, different ways to live, work, and play. There are lessons to be learned from the past, and it's all about engineering the future, looking at different nodes. It's getting more complex, and unless we get into we change the we do a paradigm change to focus more on use cases, proof of concepts, interoperability, we will not be able to achieve much. We will be stuck, and for that the government, industry, academia, and startups all need to come together and collaborate. So what do you need to do? You need to go meet your boss and tell him, I want to participate in standards, and he will give you some things that you may need approvals of. So you need to argue that, right? And here I put some data on how much, in order to be effective in standards, how much time you will have to commit, how much effort you'll have to commit. And you can look at this offline. 4 to 10 local meetings per year, 5 to 8 global meetings per year you will have to participate in. Okay, so standards are the collaboration piece in co-opetition. Standards, the tool is consensus building, and it's a lot of fun and learning in an open, fearless forum. And it is the sure shot way for socioeconomic development, for accelerating socioeconomic development. So thank you very much. Here are the acknowledgements, and I'm presenting all of this in my personal capacity. Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela, for taking time out and talking about the whole importance of telecom on socioeconomic development and many details. There are at least one question. I think Uttara is letting you know that you have done a great job, 360 views with standards presentation. There is a question, is sustainability one of the goals for 1M2M project outcomes?
Yes, yes. So there is a special task force on sustainability that was set up at the steering committee level. They have come up with their report, and now it is getting incorporated into the study groups, the learnings, and from that. So sustainability is also a very important thing for ITU, for 6G. Addressing the sustainable development goals is becoming a very, very important thing for 6G overall. Yes.
Thank you. If there are other questions, do goals from Bharat 6G vision intersect with the TSDSI goals? I think they are aligned, but you can.
Yes, the Bharat 6G vision, in the development of the task forces, there was a task force on standardization, which was actually chaired by our chair. And in the other working groups also, there was strong participation from the members of TSDSI. So of course, there is a cross-pollination between TSDSI and Bharat 6G vision.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I request our council member and the chair of Bangalore chapter IEEE to propose a vote of thanks and wave of IEA and IEEE, sir. Over to Dr. Aloknath.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. I think it has been wonderful explanations of the India's efforts on the technology side, the 5G technology and the variations of that we brought in. There are a lot of applications, smart city, and she mentioned about Bangalore traffic jam and the interoperability part of it. There are public infrastructure aspects of Aadhaar, Jan Dhan Yojana, all of those. And at the same time, what we are doing, but what we can do more, how to get involved in standards. Different countries' needs are different. So Switzerland to Bangalore, or the city to city, the population versus population density, that matters quite a lot. And also the affordability. The needs change significantly. So how to play that role is an important aspect, and definitely the interoperability has brought in, has made actually telecom a very successful entity overall in the global sense. So thanks, Ms. Pamela Kumar, for again taking the time out and wonderful presentations. We are really grateful to you on this World Telecom Day, celebrating together. And we will continue these celebrations. Today being a weekday, we had this webinar, but on 20th May, we are doing continuing this thread but more on digital technologies for road safety. You talked about the traffic jam. We have done some project in Electronic City from IEEE and many others on the vehicular and the traffic light management. So we are going to talk about these along with student community in the Institution of Engineers venue on 20th May, Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The students will also participate. And I think I will welcome all of you to join again on that day. IE and IEEE are also starting to collaborate together. We have a lot of commonalities, but a lot of also complementary skills in both places in terms of infrastructure, in terms of resources, assets. So we are signing an MOU. And this today, we're glad to announce today is online, but I think physically we'll take care on Saturday and beyond, so that IE and IEEE, with the student bodies that we have in various colleges, we can reach, we can popularize this telecom and the standards and all of these benefits that are there. So that's one key point. You also mentioned nicely about the MNCs are doing the innovation and the patent, but how do you popularize India companies to come and venture into this bit more? The whole R&D investments. I personally, am quite involved in my own missions. And those who are interested, they can see ctoleadership.com or LinkedIn on some of these places where R&D and innovations could be taken forward. And lastly, I think we could not play the message from ITU Secretary General. So have a look into that. We'll share with all the attendees. And then please listen to that short message, but there will be also long messages and other panel discussions. Please learn more on this topic of how low developing countries, least developed countries can take benefit of this telecom and the infrastructure in the ICT segments. So with that, I thank you all. It has been a nice time, 1 hour together, and we'll meet again on Saturday. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Loknath Dey. And our Salim, the police traffic commissioner, is agreed to be the inaugurating officer and is going to listen our solutions for Bangalore traffic. He is coming on 20th in person for our inauguration and MOE signing function. He sent a mail just now that he is going to be a chief guest on that.
Very happy to know
that.
that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Bye, sir.
Hello.